Oh, we are going. Okay. Are we?
Hey, yes, we are.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
We
Awesome.
be live.
Awesome. 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 I didn't see the little dot pop up until just now. So, all right. Welcome, everybody. This is the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host, Samantha Studebaker-Carl, broadcasting to you from Indianapolis, Indiana. And I'm here with my good friends, Dan and Sandy and Catherine. And hopefully we're going to have some other people jump on here with us as well. But today our topic is Chapter 6 of The Wisdom of Sundays by Oprah Winfrey, and the subject is forgiveness and mercy. And this is a really deep chapter, guys. I don't know if you have listened to the audio version of it or read the book version, but there is a lot that we can discuss in here and some really powerful things that is going to be pretty awesome to talk about. So, but before we get going, for those of you who are watching as a recording, I just want to make sure that you know how to participate. That's a huge thing. We want to have you jump on here if you'd like to, and because we'd love to hear your perspective on the things that we talk about. So there'll be a link below this video where you can click right on the Zoom link, and it'll bring you right into this meeting room, and you can participate with us. And we get together every Saturday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern. And if you need more information than that, then you can jump over to our Facebook group, which is mindsetmasterycollective.com. That is the direct link to our Facebook group, or you can just search for us on Facebook. Okay, so with all of that being said, we'd love to have you join us. And let's introduce everybody, and then we can get our topic started. So guys, jump out.
Sandy, I unmuted you.
Oh, thank you. I will go then. Sandy, we're here in Miami Beach, so here I am driving again. I have a patient at 11, so I'll be mostly listening and getting ready here. So good to see you all.
Dan, Sisik in fabulous sunny Las Vegas right now, where the heat is starting to heat up here, and we're getting back into the 90s, and they're saying the end of the week's supposed to be 100. So I'm not quite ready for that heat yet. As I always said, I love the heat, but I usually don't think about it till like June. So this is a little early for me, right in the beginning of May. So, but ready to hear what we have to discuss and going from there.
Hi, this is Catherine from Boulder, Colorado. Beautiful Boulder, Colorado. We're having amazing weather, and it's just gorgeous. And I've been enjoying walking daily and getting some gorgeous pictures lately. So I need to head up into the mountains and go get some is what I need to do.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Awesome. I'm so happy for you to be able to do all that walking, because I know that you've been struggling with that for the past, how long now? 10 years? Something like that. So I'm so happy for you. I didn't hear you because you're muted, but you can share with us.
Long time, since 2005, actually.
So more than 10 years. Wow. So awesome. 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 So today, guys, our chapter is chapter 6 with the topic of forgiveness and mercy. And I just want to read a little bit from this beginning of the chapter that Oprah writes in here. And she has a quote at the beginning, and it says, "Forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could be any different. It's accepting the past for what it was and using this moment and this time to help yourself move forward." And she starts the chapter and she says, "For so many people searching for peace and purpose, the most debilitating source of pain has been the struggle to forgive." And she goes on a little bit further down. She says, "There was a time when I believed that the act of forgiveness meant accepting the offender and by doing so condoning the act." She says, "I didn't understand that the true purpose of forgiveness is to stop allowing whatever that person did to you to affect how you live your life now." And that's a huge thing. And I think that is a place that we have, sometimes get stuck on, is when somebody's done something to hurt us or offend us in some way, is that we get stuck on that act, that thing that happened, and we have a hard time getting past it and don't realize that the pain that we're experiencing is pain that we're causing ourselves. And it's not about what that other person did. It's about how we react from that point forward. And I love how she says in here, forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could be any different. And she said that was a big aha moment for her. And I can see that, because the past is, you can't change the past, but you can come to terms with it, and you can move forward with your life and not stay stuck in the past. And that I think is a huge thing, is that whole aspect of when you're still being upset about something that happened in the past, then you're stuck there and you can't move forward in your life. What do you guys think?
I can definitely go from very personal experiences on that, having been abused as a kid by my real mom and dad and things like that. It took a lot of years to get to that where I could um, for- you know, forgive and understand that had nothing. It was where we come from, what they were going through, what issues they had, and like that, and that ultimately I didn't do anything to really cause it, because I really didn't. There went my phone. I'll pick it up in a minute. Um, and but yet I kind of relived a little bit too, and it would put me right in that pain and that feeling. And that, I think, what a lot of people get stuck in is they relive it, and they feel that pain, and they feel that issues, and they have it all come forward. And I also have gone through some of that, with some other friends too, as of late, having to remember that, it's, don't let that be the thing that I focus on, forgive them, let it move on. And I have to forgive them, or at least for me, that's something I need to do, because then that allows me to move forward. Because if I don't forgive them, I'm not going to move forward. And, and so that's been a very real part of my life, over the years. And, that's been an area where I've grown a lot, and just let it, learn to realize that, and that's the thing. We all always want to go back and change that past. We really want to go back and change it, so that way we can feel better about going forward. But like you said, Samantha, you can't change the past. I can't physically go back in that, time. If I could, would I really want to? Because then it would change the whole aspect of what I've learned and what I've grown and where I've come to now, and to the person I am now. So do I really want to even go back and change that past? I don't think now, retrospect, and what I've learned and what I've grown from, no, because then it would change who I am as a person now, and my capacity to forgive and understand and put myself in other people's shoes, and to look and see, that this is, it's them, it's not me, and it gives me a bigger heart for compassion, and to have empathy, and to, be able to forgive even more and more, and let the other person have that space so that they can forgive themselves too then. So that's where I've come from.
Yeah, forgiveness is a funny thing, because
I think Sandy was trying to jump out there.
oh, was she? Oh, let me
Yeah.
unmute her. Hold on.
Okay.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, there you go.
Sorry, no, it was silent for a minute, so I thought I'd try. Sorry, Catherine, to cut you off. What was I gonna say? Oh, I know that, well, for me this year, like a really big awakening I had for myself was that a lot of times when I am angry at someone for something they did in the past, I realized that it was more, I was ending up beating myself up more. Like anything that happened that somebody did wrong, I would say that in the end, I would make myself wrong. Like, well, if I did this or I did this differently, they wouldn't have done that. So I saw, for me, forgiveness wasn't so much having to forgive other people, but forgiving myself, because I tend to beat myself up over things other people did, and it's like insane. So that's been like a thing I've been really working on this whole year. Like, it was like in the New Year's I had this whole realization about it. Like, wow, like my whole life, I can forgive somebody, and I feel like I can forgive others pretty easily, but it's myself that's like the hardest to forgive, because I make myself wrong for so much. And like you said, Dan, thanks for sharing. But like you said, I forget now what you said, what I was going to say that you said. Sorry, paying attention to the road here. What was I going to say? I don't know. But yeah, so that's a big one for me. And like, yeah, not being able to change the past and realize, like, I remember what I was going to say. That we always learn something from things that went quote unquote wrong or happened bad to us or whatever. Like, there's always, when we look back, something that we got out of it, if we really take the time to grow from it and learn from it rather than stay in blame and shame and stuff. Like, we can take it to a different level where it's helping us and helping us grow. So those are my thoughts for the moment. Thanks for letting me hop out.
Yeah, I'll jump out and make one other point too. Sandy made a good point that I forgot to mention, but I've learned from that too, is I beat myself up horribly for anything that somebody else might do towards me or make me feel, I mean, I will try to do everything I can to fix it, change that, what I think is wrong in me, to appease other people. I do that all the time, and I'm learning. It's been a hard lesson to learn, and I've had to learn it more within this last year through some other issues and friendships and stuff and things like that. But there's one I'm really learning, is to quit beating myself up so much, because I took that from when I was being abused and stuff and things like that, and really and that's why I said it took me a long time to forgive, and I have that ability, but I still have the tendency to beat myself up and, say, what did I do wrong? What can I change? How can I fix that? How can I fix that in me? When really it's not me, and I need to accept that it's coming more from their place and not my place, and to accept who I am better in that sense too. So that's the one thing I am learning over this last year.
Don't you think there's so much hypocrisy around all of this stuff? To me, because if you really have, quote, faith, and you believe that everything is for a reason, everything is in some fashion predestined, not exactly, but like if you believe that we are eternal souls, and we kind of like choose this mission, so to speak, before we come into these bodies on this planet this time around. And maybe you don't believe that, but I'm just throwing that out there. But if you believe that, then how could you ever need to forgive anybody for anything, including yourself? Because it's all supposed to be the way it is. And it's funny, because all of us have admitted, if not today on another episode, that something has happened that is in our lives that has devastated us, and sometimes that's happened multiple times, but then later on we completely see why it happened, or we get a as Oprah calls them, aha, moment from it or whatever. Oh, now Now I totally get why that happened, because this and this and this, now I understand this, and blah, 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 blah. So if it's all part of the plan, there's really nothing to forgive. I can't wait to read that book, Just Mercy, because it really touches forgiveness is there's so much hypocrisy. Like I started out, there's so much hypocrisy around forgiveness. And I don't mean to bash, but having been sent out to multiple different what do they call them, not nationalities, denominations of churches when I was a child, trying to get me saved. They just kept throwing me in different ones. And, you know, they just preach like hell and damnation on one hand and forgiveness on the other. And yet my experience was more of the hell and damnation, because I got most of my beatings after church, you know, for misbehaving. So it's interesting. And in the spiritual, and I'm not just picking on religion, but in the spiritual world, it's almost as bad, you know. And really, like, and I understand how, like, there's so many books about forgiveness. How many books have you guys seen on forgiveness, right? And it is a powerful thing to get to, regardless of how you get there, whether you can just jump to okay, well, there's nothing to forgive because it's all happening for a reason. You know, if you can just bypass all the other shit and get to that, that's good. But if you can't, you know, if you need to go through the process of going through every one of these things, I'm going to just save you a little bit of time here, because as you get older, you're going to realize that you've messed up as much as anybody else. Even when you didn't mean to, you know, even when you had the best of intentions, still, like, life happens and things affect people, and you have effects on people and lives that you know, maybe didn't mean to for whatever reason. This book, Just Mercy, you know, it talks about, I haven't started reading it yet, but they talk about it in, is it this? Yeah, it is this chapter. They talk about it, isn't it? And it's about, I guess it's a lawyer that wrote the book, and he defends, his mission is to work with the condemned. So he defends people and works with people who are on death row and things like that. And what they find is that, you know, some of the lives, like this one kid, I think his name was Ian, and it sounded like he was killed fairly young, put to death fairly young, went into the prison system really young. But he was in, I think they said 29 foster homes by the time he was 10 or something like that. Now, just that much instability alone.
I'm wondering, I'm remembering, I thought that was a different person.
Oh, am I mixing up two stories? I might be.
Maybe, but I would have to re-listen to it, because it seems like he told two different stories. One was the one that was on death row and was executed, and then the other one was the young child that was like 13 in all the foster homes. I think it was two different stories, although I could be confused as well, too.
No, I could totally have mixed them up. Regardless, there's all these stories about people who have just had horrendous experiences, and those experiences have led them to do things. Now, could forgiveness have helped any of that? Who the hell knows? You know, I mean, we are spiritual, but we're human too. And it's, if you don't get, you know, I was blessed with the super aha moment. I mean, I was completely out of body being told there's nothing to forgive. So for me, it was easy, right? Most people aren't blessed with that kind of a, you know, experience. But I do know, and we've talked about it before because I've brought it up around gun control. I do know that we have to start working with kids when they're younger, not letting them wait until they're 54 sitting on a mastermind for 4 years to try to figure some of this stuff out. We need to get to them sooner and teach them some of these thought and mind. In school, they don't teach finance. Well, that's one thing they need to do, right? Like they don't teach us stuff you need. They do teach mind control, but it's not in the way that we need it to be taught, right? We need it to be taught like this and these sorts of concepts, as opposed to just sit in your chair and don't move and, kind of the mind control that they teach right now. They say forgiveness changes people's lives in an instant when you can get there. So if you are harboring things, especially if it's something that somebody has done to you, if that's affecting you, you have, just like Dan said, you have to realize, and I broke out my poem book because I wrote a poem about this years ago, and if it's any good, I'll read it. But when you go through an experience, like I'm just going to use rape for an experience, for an example. Most incidents like that last minutes. If it's, a horrible person that kidnaps somebody or something, it could be hours or days, but most of the times it's minutes. And yet boys, girls, men, women torture themselves with those few moments of time for their entire lives. They torture themselves with that. They become the abuser. And we are energetic, and we are all interconnected, and we do get glitches that replay. It's kind of like Groundhog Day when we get this, and we'll have these memories come to us, and we weren't really even thinking about it, but I don't know, something triggers it and brings it up, But if we can not, every day, every moment, every decision that we let that affect us, we're torturing ourselves. We abuse ourselves more than anybody ever imagined to abuse us, because we rerun it over and over and over and over. And we do it with conversations, and we do it with arguments, and if he said and she said, and if I had said, blah, 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 So if we can just get to these kids sooner, and help with some of this mind control. But when you go through 29 foster homes in 10 years, less than 10 years, I don't know if you guys have ever been in a foster home. I was not in a foster home as a foster child, but I was in foster homes because we fostered children. So I was kind of on the other end of it. But they're not, most of the people are very well-meaning in the beginning and kind of like teachers, and then they get completely overwhelmed and the reality sets in and it becomes a really difficult thing. I mean, God bless all the people out there fostering children, but some of those situations are not, the children's best interest is not always what's in mind. It's the financial gain that they get from having the kids and all these other, things, benefits and stuff. And some of those can be very abusive because those foster parents themselves, typically the reason they're doing that is because they've been through shit themselves. They're already damaged, and then they get overwhelmed with the stress of these kids who are acting out. Everybody's hurt and abusing each other, But again, we have to teach people how to not take that abuse and just continue it for the rest of their lives. and turn it into psychoses.
Sandy, did you want to jump out before you had to jump off, or do you have time to talk still? We can't hear you. Hold on. There you go.
I'm good. Yeah, my patient's not till 11, so I just got to my office. So yeah, I can be here till then. But yeah, on what Catherine was saying about things being predestined, that's something I've been hearing a lot too lately. And my Kundalini yoga teacher training one day, we went into this deep conversation about that, like how everything is already written up there somewhere. And it just was like, wow, and we never really know, like, why we're going through something in the bigger picture. Like there's this bigger picture that we don't know because we don't have this creator mind. The creator has a mind that's so greater that we don't even know what the bigger picture is a lot of the times. So that always soothes me to think of that. Like there's a bigger picture here. There's a reason of why these things are happening in my life in a certain way. And I mean, this is maybe off the topic of forgiveness a little bit, but then I also read this article this week about how most people don't even really know what they want. Like we think we want something. And then in this experiment, I don't know how they exactly did the experiment, but then they made the person believe that they wanted something else than they came in wanting. And they would create a story around that new thing that they were told that they would want. And it's like they'll back up that with a story. So we'll have this thing that we want and we'll make this story of this is what I want and blah, 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 blah. But then it could change and then we want something like we don't really ultimately know what we want. And it made me think, because I go back and forth like about wanting kids for the past few years, ever since my clock started ticking. Like in my 20s, early 30s, I never thought about it. I didn't like, I don't want them, whatever. And then my clock was ticking. I'm like, okay, do I don't? And, and then I had this relationship where it seemed like, okay, it's going to happen. And I really want this. And then that didn't work out. And so I'm like, did I really want them? And I'm like, I don't know if I really want them, and it's like that for me, that's an example of like, I don't know, like, and I would be happy with either scenario. And I think when we want things in life, it's like, just being happy with whatever scenario comes, because a lot of times we can want something and it doesn't happen for probably a reason, and say, okay, I did have the kids. I'm sure there would have been 1,000 other lessons that would have come with that relationship and with having children. And then not having that, there's other things showing up in my life that are teaching me different things. So it's always like this bigger picture that like, really, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. I'm just going to be humble. Okay, creator, what's the plan? So yeah, that's where my brain went with when you were talking, Catherine. Thank you for all you shared.
Yeah, I kind of was thinking along the lines of what Catherine was saying and listening to what she said, and I made a comment in the chat that maybe part of, this predestination, because I believe a little bit in some of that too, that, that the creator, God, the universe, I call him God, does have that plan that he's got laid out for me, and I'm the one that keeps screwing up that plan based on what I'm going through and what I'm living and what I experience and my humanness, and where I'm not always in the best of tune or engaged in a conversation, so to speak, with him or the creator of what my next step is or where I should go. But I think that the forgiveness part has a big part of playing and shaping and helping me get to that better connection, so that I can be in tune with where I'm being guided towards it through that big plan that I don't have the full understanding of. And if I did right now, it would probably overwhelm me, and I would be like, but how, what, when, where, why, how does that all happen? So at that point, I think this is also the way we learn and grow as a way of shaping us and getting us to be in that better connection and to be more I don't like this word, but enlightened, I guess, into where we're headed. And I agree with Sandy. I think sometimes we think we want one thing and then that doesn't happen, so we kind of just let it go and think, oh, well, it wasn't meant to be, so we switch gears and move on to something else, or something else that shows itself and might look promising or something like that. I know I've done that a few times too, in certain areas of my life. And so it's kind of like, where am I going? What do I really want? Am I really, there? So with that, that's a little bit of what I got from what Catherine said. Samantha's turn. She hasn't said much.
Well, you guys brought up so many things we could talk about, and I think we'd probably talk a whole show on what Sandy just brought up a moment ago about not knowing what we want. That's a whole thing in and of itself, But let me kind of look back through my notes here. Oh, wow. Because when Sandy was talking to begin with and talking about realizing about forgiving yourself and, recognizing the part that you played in whatever it was that happened. And I completely agree with you. I feel like anytime something happens, I'm beating myself up more for my part that I played in it than what that other person did. And because, if I hadn't done what I did, I wouldn't have been in that situation in the first place. And I kind of wonder sometimes, though, if when we are mad at someone else at the beginning, if we aren't really thinking or aware of all the thoughts that are going on in our head, is that we just are automatically just mad at that other person. And we don't realize that we are beating ourselves up in the process of it. And when we can kind of become aware of that and realize that I'm just as mad at myself as I am at that other person, for me, when I realized that was a huge shift in my own thinking, because I realized that, yes, I could have done so many things different to have avoided whatever that was. And then I can take responsibility for, okay, it wasn't just that other person, it was just as much me. And so then I can think that even deeper and be like, all right, well, I can't change what I did, and I can't change what they did, and I can't change the past, obviously. So now I need to just come to terms with it and realize that I don't have to keep beating myself up for it. And I don't know, I feel like when you realize it's your own responsibility or it's your own fault that whatever happened, it's easier. I don't know. I mean, that's me personally, though, because then I can address the situation and know that, okay, if it happens again, it's because I'm putting myself back in that situation again, and I'm choosing to do so. I don't know. It's like when I realize that it's my own actions that have brought me to somewhere, is that I can choose different in the future, and I can, I don't know, I can forgive myself. I don't know if it's easier that way or if it's easier, but it's also having empathy for that other person too. And realizing that, we both did this. It takes two people to have something happen, whatever it is. Sometimes it's more, but generally, you are a participant in the situation, and whatever it is. But then Catherine, you were talking about, everything being predestined, as if, we came here with this choice and everything is okay, and I've thought that a lot too. And it's like, okay, well, if that's the case, then I can just look at life as it's an adventure, And sometimes I go up a mountain and sometimes I go down. Sometimes I experience something fun as heck. And then other times I experience something that supposedly isn't fun as heck, you know? But then, then Sandy, you're talking about, what we want and what we don't want. So then I'm like, well, is whatever I think is not good, is it really not good? Or is it just I have this story around it telling me it's not good? I don't know. So there's a lot that we can look at all of this. And God, in that interview that that Oprah did with Brian Stevenson was heart-wrenching in so many ways, because some of the things that she talked about in there, regarding like different poverty communities, and how the kids in those areas just have an automatic expectation that they're going to end up in jail. They haven't even done anything right. They haven't done anything wrong yet. And yet they just expect that. That's like they grow up with that expectation that they're going to end up in jail. And that just, I'm like, oh my God, I can't even imagine, because I have the complete opposite. I grew up never expecting to be in jail, and that just seemed like that's normal, right? And we've talked about so many things in our studies of, pretty much what you focus on is what you get. And like you were saying, Catherine, is if we could just get to these kids and teach them that we have control over our own destiny versus these, expectations that you're going to end up in jail. And there's so many things that she talked about in there that just, just break my heart. And, it just really makes me think along the lines of, the mercy side of this. And I agree. I think that we should look into reading that book next, because I think it can really open our eyes to the experiences that other people that don't, that weren't raised the same way we were, go through. And I don't know, a lot of what what they were talking about in that interview was how our justice system being skewed. The poor don't have the representation that the rich do, obviously. And then of course we have this kind of perspective of, the difference between good people and bad people. And we have this automatic thought that if you are a criminal or you've done a crime, is that you're bad, versus automatically having forgiveness and mercy in our minds. And just the fact that, she was talking about he was talking about how many millions of people are in our jail systems just because, they haven't even committed violent crimes. And it just made me sit here and just realize that, if we could have more forgiveness towards ourselves, I think it's more of ourselves than anything else, because we take part in all of this. If we could just have more forgiveness in ourselves, we would realize that other people, just because they try and steal or they are on drugs or sell drugs or whatever, it doesn't make them a bad person. I loved how she said, or they were saying, that a person is more than the sum of the act of the bad thing that they supposedly did. And we have to remember that, because we're not perfect. None of us are. We've all done something that we are not proud of. We've all made mistakes. And I feel like when we can just recognize that in ourselves, is that we can recognize that in other people. And we talk a lot about connecting with each other on a deeper level, a spiritual level. And when we connect all of what we've kind of talked about here, today, as far as, forgiving ourselves, and maybe this is all just a big game we're playing here. I don't know. I see it that way. You see it as predestined, whatever you want to call it. We all came here by choice, and this is what we signed up for. Is that yeah, there isn't anything to forgive. There's never been anything to forgive. And you were talking about church earlier, Catherine, on how hell and damnation versus forgiveness, and those are they're contradictory. You can't have hell and damnation without judgment, and you can't have forgiveness if there's judgment, right? And it's like, it's complete contradiction. It just makes absolutely no sense. And in my opinion, it doesn't, because you can't truly have mercy and forgiveness if you're sitting there saying there's something that person did that's so horrible. I don't know. Anyway, that's my thought so far. I know everybody else can talk for an hour too. I said that and then nobody wants to talk. Let me read another part of this chapter. Maybe that will spur us into the thoughts.
I thought that it was just heartbreaking. I think the numbers were probably 1 out of every 10 people who've been put to death on death row was innocent. And a lot of that is because of what you said, the disparity in, what money can buy you as far as freedom when it comes to our legal system. And it's I'm going to hold that one for a little while. Go ahead. I want to hear from Sandy.
Oh, I'll let Sandy go. She has something to say. She's good. I'm going to jump a little bit on what you and Samantha were saying about the legal system and how we hear it all the time, innocent until proven guilty, but yet already in a lot of people's minds, and goes to the idea of forgiveness and stuff, looking at a person and seeing more than just the sum of that act, like you said, and being able to forgive that. But yet we've a lot of times have already, for lack of a better word, crucified them already, saying that no matter what, and they're guilty until proven innocent in a lot of cases. And it's sad that we don't have a system where no matter what, the representation is equal all across the board, so that way you get the best chance for a fair chance, because I know I would want that in my case. I may not be able to afford a lawyer. I'm not that rich, really. I barely am paying my bills as it is now. I'm still living and still surviving. But if you were to look at where I am, and if I were to get charged with something because of something made me fly off the handle, let's say, I'm just lose it, which is not what I am. I normally try to stay in, but I would want that availability to know that I'm going to get just as good and just as equal representation as somebody that has all the money. I think that's where that our legal system is lacking in a sense, that because a lot of times you don't get the chance to really have the best chance to defend yourself. Not saying, ultimately you might still get the same outcome. You might still be found guilty. You might still have to do your time. You might have to go through that process. But, for a system that's predicated on that, it needs to be weighted better, I think, in some ways, to be able to live out what it's predicated on, and to help show society that, forgiveness can be a real true step, and help us, so that way we can help everybody learn that, forgiveness needs to be one of the first places we go. And so then maybe there won't be so many repeat offenders, or won't be so many repeats, or people get that idea, like what you were saying, that, when they're little, they already feel like they're destined to end up there, rather than that, oh, I have just as much of a fighting chance as anybody else based on the decisions I make, rather on what society throws at me because of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I was shocked. Um, you hear stories on the news about, young kids being tried as adults. And, but I don't know. I guess I just didn't even realize what that meant, you know? And when he was talking about this kid who had been brought up in the foster system and had been in 20 some odd foster homes and just had a rough time, and he was struggling, and mentally he was struggling, and emotionally, and was having psychotic issues, true psychotic issues. And of course, how can you not? I mean, at a child 13, I think he was 13 years old when he'd been through all of these homes. And like you said, Catherine, the fact that so many foster parents were foster kids themselves and struggling emotionally, and then they're put in charge of kids just like them or worse, it it's hard. It's hard. It's hard for me to watch, being in the job that I work in, just watching so many of these young parents and how they are with these young kids, and realizing that we could do so much better. And that's just with normal everyday families. I can't even imagine what's going on in some of these foster homes that are kids that were brought up in the foster system in that way. And but just the fact that this poor kid has a psychotic break and ends up murdering somebody, and I don't know what all the details are. And yeah, I could see that, Dan. Or not see that, but I can understand. What was I going to say? So he has this psychotic break, and he ends up murdering. Maybe it was his foster parents. I'm not sure. And then he's tried as an adult, and because he's tried as an adult, he ends up in an adult prison. And I mean, I suppose on one hand, it's a good thing that the warden saw that this could be an issue, because it could have been even worse. Not that it wasn't bad, but it could have been even worse. But he puts him in solitary confinement. So he's in solitary confinement for 18 years. And I'm like, it doesn't make any freaking sense. It makes absolutely no sense that should have happened. I mean, where is it? I don't know. It pains me that's the only alternative that we could find for this child who had all of this happen to him, is that he has to be in adult prison and put in solitary confinement, because that's all we know what to do. I mean, it's unexcusable. and and I know that's not the only story, and I'm sure that when we read this book, we're going to hear even more horrible stories. And but and I think it boils down to this forgiveness and this mercy aspect of, we're just so cut and dry. You do something wrong, you're going away, period. There's no other alternative, because we don't know what to do, and it's sad, because if that child instead, and then in the other story of the one that was put on death row, and he was coming up to the days of right before he was going to be executed, and then all of a sudden all these people are coming out of the woodwork going, what can I do for you? How can I help you? What do you want for your last meal? What do you need? What do you da? And he's going, where were all these people when I was going through all this at the beginning, or before anything ever happened? Where was all these people when I was struggling in my life? And maybe this could have been prevented if I just had a little bit of help, and it, if we could just teach kids when they're young that they do have power in their lives. They do have the power within themselves to not continue to make their life even worse than it is. That they can work through these things and come out on the other side and not end up in jail or not end up murdering somebody, or even, I mean, it just makes me sad. It just makes me sad. And I don't know. I mean, if anything that we talk about here helps even one person, I am thankful, because that's what I feel like we're here for, is to have these deep conversations and help people realize that it doesn't have to keep going down the road that it's going, in your life, whatever you're struggling with. It doesn't have to be that way. It's that you can work through it. You can. And, yeah. Somebody else jump out.
Yeah, it's really sad. Yeah, you're making me get teary. The way the system is, and I'm seeing more and more where people are making little steps to change the system, to bring meditation, to bring yoga, to bring things that will help people heal, because we make mistakes. I mean, if I was caught with some of the things I did when I was in college, like a reckless, crazy maniac, I could have been locked up and stuck. And if something just had been 1 second off in some scenarios, and looking back, I'm like, wow, it's scary. And to think that, we make a mistake when we're young or any time, and they could just society gives up on us, rather than help us and rehabilitate and surround us in that love and compassion, because we all go through shit and we all do stupid things, like you said, especially when we're young. We're like finding ourselves. We don't know right from wrong sometimes, and trying things out, and then like, oops, oh, realizing even years later, like, wow, I did that. And so it's really sad. And I hope we can have some changes soon, because it's not helping. It reminds me, I don't know where it was, like there's an article about this tribe. I think it's in Africa, I may be wrong, somewhere, where when somebody does something wrong, they put the person in the center of a circle, and they're just there for them. I forget exactly what they do, but they do this ritual. Instead of punishing them, they surround the person and give them love or something like that. I don't remember the exact story, but it's whole opposite of what we do. Like, you lock them up forever. Instead, okay, this person's going through some troubles in their mind. Let's come together as a community and help them. And that's the way it should be. I mean, because we're all one, and we're all here, and we all make mistakes, and we all go through stuff. And it's sad and backwards, how things are right now. So that's it. I'm going to run because my patient will be knocking any moment, but thank you so much. A great conversation that we could go on forever and ever with. But good to see you all, and thanks for sharing all this deep, awesome, thought-provoking stuff. Love you. Bye.
I love you, Sandy. I love that, the thought, what you just shared about the tribe that that surrounds the other person, the offender, with love. And I think that's part of our problem, is that we don't know what to do, and so we just lock them away, versus taking responsibility for what that person did ourselves. What did we do to cause this to happen? And I realized that, a lot of people probably like, what do you mean? What did I do? I'm way over here. I wasn't involved in that. I don't even know what you're talking about. I get that whole attitude, and I understand that. But at the same time, we all are playing a role. And maybe part of what we need to do is start thinking about what we did or are not doing to take part in in that aspect of it, of, you know, if these things are happening and they're, I mean, they're horrible, obviously, but what are we doing or not doing to add to the problem or not fix the problem? Or, you know, I mean, and I mean, obviously we can't fix all of it just ourselves. I think it's our world as a whole. And because I think we can look at just about anything that's going on in the world, and, you know, we can make a choice. Am I going to participate in this or not participate in it? And if I am participating in it, and am I just adding to the problem by complaining and bitching and blah, 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 you know, or am I not doing anything, which isn't doing anything? Or am I, you know, doing something that, what can I do to make a change for the positive? You know, how can I take responsibility for whatever it is that's going on? You know, there was that, the book that I read back or way a long time ago is Zero Limits by Joe Vitale. And he was talking about this one doctor who all he did was give love basically to the people that were, because he was a doctor in a it was like a maximum security mental facility or something like that. And he went there as a person who was in charge, but he never even saw one patient. He just would look at their files and send them love. And that kind of blew my mind, because I'm sitting here going, you know, how can just sending a person love? But of course, now I know we're all, you know, we're energy, and we affect each other in energetic ways that we never even knew was possible. I mean, and maybe when we see these things that come up in the news or in the world, or we hear about them or whatever, is instead of getting all mad and upset about it, is to just simply send them love. And maybe that can help. I don't know, but I mean, in that story, he was able to, all of those people that were in that facility ended up being rehabilitated, and people that had never had a chance before. And it boggles my mind that's all he would do. And, you know, because sometimes I sit here and I see stuff in the news and I'm like, oh my God, it's horrific. How can I do something about that? I wouldn't even know where to start if I was actually going to go physically do something. But I do know I can give love, and I can forgive, and I can, and have mercy, knowing that whatever that is that's happening out there is not just somebody going around murdering people, but there's something else going on with that person. Just like when they're talking in the interview, you know, the person is more than the sum of that action that they took. Is that there's more going on in that person's life, and to have that compassion for them and the mercy in my own mind. Yeah, so I know everybody has something else to say.
I was just going to remind you that we're right at 8 o'clock. So I think this is a subject we could go on and really, you know, keep diving into, because it is such a deep subject, and there is so much hurt out there in the world that is sprung out of unforgiveness, out of, you know, um, what people feel is projected on them as selves, as what we also project on other people, because of insecurity in ourselves, but also in unfamiliarity, because we don't like these actions or these attitudes or these things, because we don't necessarily understand why are they doing that. Why can't they be like everybody else? You know, why can't they, you know, fall in line or do this? What's, you know, going on? But like you said, a lot of people have issues amongst themselves, you know, and I don't want to say psychological or things like that, but for lack of a better word, psychological, or things that, you know, that are breaking down in them, that help them not perceive and understand things in the ways that normal I don't want to say normal, but normal people would. And we got to learn to look at those things and understand them, so that way we can help them back to a more normal way of thinking. Like Catherine said, start with when they're little, you know, because every parent, does the best they can. But at the same point, you know, we all have our own hangups and we all have our own things, and we all, even on kids, I project things on my nieces and nephews, and they're not even my kids, but they're my niece. I project things on them and what I vision them to be, as well as what their parents vision, and it sometimes can get so convoluted that I can understand why things snap, in a way. I've had my moments where I've had to kind of, I've wanted to just, but I've had to kind of refocus and recenter myself and go, look, that's not what I want to be about, you know. But what helps me get to that is the people and the things that I was taught and brought up with, and how I learned from experience too with my own family situations, you know. But I had family that stepped in and did something too. So that's the other thing that, um, I think is an issue. We have to not be so afraid of getting involved. And I think that's the biggest thing, is people are so afraid of getting involved. But we've also been in a lot of ways have been told, stay out of it. It's my life. It's my, my family, my stuff. You have no say. You have no, and people get mad when you have, with the best of intentions, or wanting to try and help, and you get told that. So a lot of people have quit trying to do that. Whereas back in days of old, when you look at a lot of how communities were and stuff, communities were more communities. They did things more communally. Yes, the parents or the family still had their structure, and they still did, you know, a lot of the issuing out of things, but the community was still involved and had a lot more say in it, and was involved. And I think we've taken a lot of that out of, you know, society in essence. And I think that's why we're reaping some of what we've been sowing.
Yeah. Well, maybe we need to, and I'm not making any promises to the audience out there, but maybe we need to write some children's books about some of these teachings that we're discovering and, coming up with. And you never know, maybe we can make an impact in that way, because otherwise there's going to be a lot of Zooms with a lot of middle-aged people sitting out there trying to figure stuff out. So what I got cracked up over earlier, because I've been cracked up over it all week since I thought about it, actually, which is hilarious. But and I don't mean any disrespect, so if I piss anybody off, sorry, I'm apologizing right now. But it occurred to me that, like before Jesus came, it was pretty much all hell and damnation, right? And then Jesus came with this message of love and was kind of saying, yeah, what you've been told isn't really right. So Jesus was kind of like the Snowden of the day, right? he was announcing, hey, they got it wrong, and things aren't really like you think they are. He was kind of like the Snowden of the day back then, letting people know that everything that was being presented to them wasn't exactly as it appeared. But I literally, when we think about some of the roles that some of the souls have taken on here, and the hell that they live with every day. If you think you live with hell as a victim of one incident, or maybe multiple incidents, imagine the hell that the person who has to live that predator life or whatever it is, imagine the hell that they live with every day. That would even cause them to act out in that way one time, much less multiple times. Or like I've brought up before, which people find it strange that I, in a way, it's not that I defend pedophiles, but I just have a different understanding of pedophiles. The hell that they go through, some of them are just, some people are just, I don't know, they're devoid of spirit in some way, like they have no conscious whatsoever. And maybe that's just the true understanding of it. Doesn't, it's all predestined or whatever, who knows? That's a whole nother 6-hour discussion. But if people can learn to forgive themselves, if people can learn to like there are people that commit what we consider evil acts, that they have to live with that they despise themselves as much as we despise them. That's what I'm trying to get to, I guess. Like they all of that hatred that everybody feels for that person that attacks that child. Some of them have a conscience and they feel that hatred for themselves every minute of their lives, of their existence. Like what, and that could happen across, not just pedophilia, but many other incidences. Think about the acts that have been committed against other humans. I mean, there's really people who have played some really imagine playing the part where everybody despises you, including yourself, 24 hours a day. I mean, that would be a tough role to play in this big performance of things, and my heart really goes out to those souls that take on those tough assignments, which is kind of how I look at it. This is a great chapter, and I think the whole point is, stay in the moment. If you stay in the moment, forgiveness doesn't even come in either. Like there's so many things that totally wipe out forgiveness. So like people get really hung up on it, and at the same time it can be just evaporating even the need for it with much thought into it. So I love you guys. Thank you so much for being here with us. And Sandy, I'm glad your patient was late.
I hit the chat thing instead of the unmute button. Thanks for sharing, everybody. I feel like this discussion could go on, and I know that when Christina comes back, she's going to want to talk about this too, and I'm sure we can continue this discussion next week. So, because we didn't even touch on the stuff that's in the book. I mean, a little bit, but we seem like we do that, but it makes sense.
We
because
can do it again next week if you want, if Christina's back and she has input she wants to put in.
Yeah, I'm sure that she will, and then if I don't know if she's not, then I mean we could still talk about some more of the stuff that's in this book or in this chapter. So okay. So anyway, guys, have a great, awesome, amazing weekend. And remember, there's a link below this video if you're on YouTube that will take you directly to this this meeting room if you want to participate with us. And we get together again every Saturday morning, or just about every Saturday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern. And what is that, 7 a.m. Pacific. So we'd love to have you. Love to hear your thoughts on some of these topics because they're deep, and I know that we all have opinions on it. So awesome. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.